Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for the Judy Glickman Lauder Lecture with this year's speaker, photographer, writer, and educator, Cig Harvey. I'd like to acknowledge that we are convening tonight's discussion in the land of the dawn, a region encompassing present-day Maine and the unceded homelands of the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, and Abenaki nations. Together, these nations represent the Wabanaki Confederacy and have stewarded these lands and waters for thousands of years before the establishment of national borders and state lines, and continue to do so today. Tonight's program is made possible by the Judy Glickman Lauder Photography Programming Fund at the Portland Museum of Art, with support from Art Bridges. Since its inception in 2022 is easier than 2022. We've welcomed Jeff Rosenheim, curator in charge of photographs at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the photographer Joyce Tennyson last year. I want to thank Judy for her support of the PMA and its growing photography collection. In 2022, Judy promised her collection of nearly 700 photographs to the museum, and we celebrated this landmark gift with a publication, an exhibition entitled Presence, which embarked on a national tour. Judy's generosity stems from her dedication to philanthropy, but more so and also from her life in front of the camera as a celebrated subject of her father's work, and behind the camera as a renowned artist. Judy is one of the champions of photography. She's one of the key people that help museums understand the value of photography and how audiences love coming to see photo exhibitions. Portland loves to have photo exhibitions, and Judy's been a big part of bringing great photography to the city and to our state. So thank you, Judy, for your support of photography in the PMA. So soon we're going to dive into Cig Harvey's world of large format photography as she and Anjuli Lebowitz, the Judy Glickman Lauder Curator of Photography, explore how Maine influences Harvey's work and its extraordinary interplay of beauty, color, joy, and ephemerality. For me, it's the lush nature of her images and the complexity of tones and layers of the soft sharpness that echoes a Cig Harvey image for me. Cig encouraged us to slow down and look. Wonder is in front of you every day, she reminds us. And her images are even better when they are in the context of her beautiful installations and her use of language. Cig Harvey is a British-born artist and writer who lives in Maine, working in large format color photography and poetry. Her practice seeks to find the magic in everyday life. She uses both images and language to explore sensory experiences and elevates the everyday. Rich in implied narrative, deeply rooted in the natural world, her world is devoted to the topic of what it is to feel. Harvey has published 5 monographs, and her next book, Emerald Drifters, will be released by Monticelli Phaidon in early 2025. If you don't already know, her books are absolutely gorgeous. Her photographs and books are in private collections and the permanent collections of many museums across the world, from the MFA in Boston to the MFA in Houston. In 2012, Cig's first monographic museum exhibition was organized by the Stenersen Museum in Oslo, Norway, and she had a mid-career survey at the Algonquin Museum of Art in 2019. She's received numerous awards and prizes, and in 2022, she was the J.P. Morgan laureate at the Paris Photo. In 2023, Eat Flowers, a documentary film about Cig by River Finlay, premiered at prestigious film festivals worldwide, winning many awards, including Special Jury Prize at the Santa Fe International Film Festival, the Audience Award at the Indie Shorts, the Festival Jury Award at the Newport Beach Film Festival, the Best Achievement in Filmmaking Award at the Alexandra Film Festival, and the 2023 International Documentary Association Best Short Documentary. Cig Harvey lives in Midcoast, Maine with her husband, Doug, and their daughter, Scout. The slow passing of time and the natural surroundings of her rural home have made her alert to the magic in the mundane. Welcome to Cig and Anjuli Lebowitz for a conversation tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Cig, for coming and joining us tonight down here in Portland. And I just wanted to share that when I first moved to Maine, I am from away, full confession, I was sitting in a waiting room down on Commercial Street, and I saw this beautiful, gorgeous book, and I remember wanting my appointment to be delayed so that I could keep reading it and keep looking at all the beautiful, beautiful pictures in it. And I just knew that once I learned that you lived in Maine, that I needed to meet you, because I was going to be the photo curator here, and I needed to know this person that made these incredibly gorgeous pictures that you can just feel leap off the page, and who somehow has this voice that also does the same thing. And it's so rare to have all of that in one person. So it's really, truly an honor to be here with you tonight.
I mean, the honor is all mine. My heart is beating furiously right now. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Anjuli, for inviting me. We tried to screen Eat Flowers here in the spring, and of course, Maine being Maine, threw this beautiful snowstorm our way, and I couldn't come down. It was too dangerous, so I'm thrilled to be here. It's a deep honor. I'll share everything I got with you tonight. Any questions? We wanted to invite the audience to ask questions all the way through, not wait to the end. Let it be something that's, hopefully our goal is that you will leave here inspired, wanting to make something, wanting to feel a little more, at the end of the talk, which is a lot to ask in an hour, so we'll do our best. I moved to Maine in 1999, and I had wanted to be a photographer since the age of 13. I worked in dark rooms at 13. I made a lot of tea for people. I always knew I was in love with the act of making a print. This idea, and I still love it, the idea of starting out with raw materials, whether it's film, with print, it's like, pieces of paper, negatives, and spending all day in the dark room and making this 3D object, a piece of paper that somehow reflected how you felt inside. So that for me was like my first love. I used to work in I thought of myself not as an artist ever, always as a street shooter. I wanted to go out in the world and tell stories about what I saw, what I felt. And I did that. I went to Bolivia when I was 17 on my own and photographed the silver mines. However, it was only and I traveled, I lived in Bermuda for a number of years, waitressing, saving up money for my master's, and I landed here in 1999 up at Maine Media. And it's really there and due to them and Maine that I sort of truly found my own voice. So I'm very grateful. I do consider myself a Mainer. I became an American only in 2016, late 2016, and it was a real honor and privilege to do that. I remember, I was there with my daughter and husband. She was waving her flag in Bangor, and there were 24 of us from 22 countries, and I cried all the way through it, and so I do identify as a Mainer. It has influenced and shaped and changed my work without a doubt. So it's such an honor to be in Portland tonight.
Such an incredible story.
Yeah.
And thinking of you at 17 going to Bolivia and photographing silver mines is also somewhat terrifying as a mother.
Yeah, I know.
Let's see, I think it's going to happen. We're going to have our chat.
Keep going.
That's so great.
But, so I worked I ran people's studios in Bermuda. I ran people's dark rooms. I worked in alternative process, which is sort of cyanotype, platinum, 19th century printmaking techniques. And I truly believe that as an artist, you almost need to, to truly know a medium, you need to spend a life in it. So I, have taught photography. I was a professor in Boston for 10 years down at the Art Institute of Boston, Lesley University, and it was a really tough decision the day I decided to sort of quit my job because I loved it. I loved teaching. I am social. I love talking to people. I love to laugh. I like to sort of trade ideas. But for me, I knew that living in Maine, I had this opportunity to live where I'm inspired every day. And that's sort of the thing I want to talk mostly about tonight is like if we can manage to live in the place where we're inspired, even if it's a lofty goal and it's 10 years from now, what a way what a way to be in the world, rather than waiting for, that week or the 2 weeks or to travel somewhere, to bring art into your daily life, to make it part of your daily practice, whether it's 20 minutes writing, whether it's an expression through cooking or dance. It doesn't matter what is the form of it, but to like integrate it into our daily lives. And it has nothing to do with sort of earning money from it. It just means like, how do we live in a creative way?
Fascinating, and I'm so sorry that I'm distracted by the tech issue.
No worries. We can,
I wanted to ask you, we were sort of jumping ahead a bit, but thinking about you're so great with words, when did that come in? Because you described how you worked in you're working in other people's studios, you're working alternative processes, you're really talking about the pictures, but when do the words begin to not just flow from you, but onto a page? So
I always wrote, and I would start in, and I'll show later if we get the slides up. If not, I'm just going to dance it out. But I always wrote, and I wrote as a way to get out more ideas in the pictures. The same way I do yoga is to clear some space so I can make more pictures and to write more words. It was a way of like meditation, of swimming, of a daily walking practice or something. So for me, the end goal was never to, that I would, be a writer. However, I started seeing how the images and the words were coming together and informing each other and doing quite different things. In many ways, I could sort of hide and shroud, sort of cover myself with the pictures through metaphor and symbol. I mean, the language of art, if you think about everything on the walls of this museum, of every museum in the country, in the world, it's the language of metaphor and symbolism. And it was only when I arrived in Maine that day, that September, where I realized like that I could do that I could tell my stories through metaphor and symbol. Before that, I had really been someone who had responded to the world, like go out with my camera, oh, that's pretty, oh, that's red. And it became this sort of like target practice in many ways. And it was only when I thought about, okay, well, what is the story I want to tell? What am I trying to, what experiences have I had, rather than telling other people's stories through documentary? What are the experiences I have had? And how can I tell that? And at this point, I think it's going to work. Is that right? It's going to work, yeah. I think. Who's got the thing? Right. Oh, it's different. So I'm going to use this mouse, and I'm going to drop my. Okay. I'm going to pass that to you. Yes. Thank you. Let's see. So this language of metaphor and symbolism, I realized that in the museums around the country were all this secret language, the secret language of art. That these stories that people were telling, that was so beyond what something was to look at. And I wanted to get behind it. I wanted to know that a cardinal meant jealousy. I wanted to know that a closed bud meant, you're a closed soul. And so I went out into the world and started thinking, well, what's my story and how can I tell it? So then I would go thrifting, and I had no money at the time, and I would go around to these amazing Goodwills in Maine, and I would find I was only allowed to spend $10, and I would go and find my props. And it couldn't be too special or too precious. I had to like take these props and be able to bury them, burn them, set them on fire, like destroy them, eat them, smear them. And that was the way I started to find my language in photography. And I had some very good teachers, Brendan Hamilton up at Maine Media Workshops, who taught me about that, that photographs aren't of things, they're about things. And that was just such a simple phrase. And I sort of would challenge you, you all to think about making work, whether it's whatever medium you have, to be this, like, what can it be about? And so I would set off in the morning to say, okay, I'm going to make work about what it was to feel betrayed or to have lost a love. How can I tell it? I'm going to tell it through light. I'm going to tell it through metaphor, through symbol. Well, what type of light? I'd ask myself, and I would brainstorm on these mind maps and fill them up. And that's what sort of led to this language and this collision of language and image coming together. The mind maps are really fascinating. Okay. You can spend all day in them. Yeah. I don't think I marked one. Okay, we're going to do it. Just don't set it down. Don't set it down. Okay. Oh, it's like a hot potato. It's getting more. Okay, woo. Over here.
Thank you, Mitch. Okay, this is great. So now we've got the huge prelude. We're good, right?
Yeah.
And we were going to start here with this very recent photograph. When did you take this, Cig?
I took this on Thursday.
Thursday, yes. And it appeared in the New York Times.
On Sunday.
On Sunday.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So we're really, this is up-to-date stuff.
Yes.
And it's a lobster, and I asked her to include this because you post, I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah.
You post these beautiful pictures on Instagram, and we can talk about sort of the use of social media later too, but I'm always like, oh, put that one in, and there's another picture too from her Instagram that's in. And I just thought this was so amazing. I remember zooming into every single corner of the picture on my phone to figure out how this was like the magical rainbow lobster of my dreams. And I also, going through all of your books these last few days and really thinking very deeply about your work, it also embodied how you really embrace the quotidian and what's sort of more Maine or sort of more cliche, as you use this. You talked about, I think on the phone yesterday, about a lobster in Maine.
Right. I've avoided for 25 years taking a lobster picture in Maine because I was told that was allowed. Like there was too many of us doing it. It was a postcard or something like that, and it sort of brought up. And my friend Ocean is here. We talked about this of just like this idea of like breaking stereotypes. Like who decides what's your subject matter? You do. You get to decide. And I think that's really important because there's sort of been these rules around art of like, well, what's correct subject matter, or what is acceptable to be considered serious. And I've always sort of pushed against that and not really understanding why, but taking on things like flowers, like cakes, like kids, like, my subject matter, I'm trying to see it in a new way. And that's how like living every day, taking the mundane, taking what's around you, and can you use light and color to see it a little differently. And so it was a challenge when I received the assignment, and I love getting work from the Times because, or any assignment work. I don't do very much of it but it shakes me by the shoulders. It takes me out of my comfort zone, and I have to come up with something. And when they said, "Do you have any lobster pictures?" I was like, "No, I don't." And so I was like, "Oh God, I'm going to make a lobster picture and make it look like yours, Cig." And I'm happy. They called this Cosmic Lobster, and it's about seeing the light, and the camera sees things different than our eyes. And I think that's why I'm so addicted to photography, even after all these years. I'm 51 now, and so I've been making pictures. That's a lot of math and a long time. And for me, I'm deeply in love with this medium, and that's what I want to share with everyone tonight. This idea of what are you obsessed with, and how can you somehow make a life like nurturing that obsession? And for me, it's color and light and photography,
Yeah, so this is just beautiful, and it also relates to this great line in Blue Violet near the end, where you talk about, making the ordinary extraordinary, and that's your life's work.
Yeah.
And you can see that from, the publications, and then just until last Thursday. So I think it's just really incredible.
Yeah, thank you. So we can move to the, I'm just going to show maybe like 10 slides here. Yeah, Anjuli, I'm scared to take the potato in case it goes wrong. But this is what I was talking about, of like, this is where I learned this language, and I would, my bitten down nails, and I would brainstorm and mind map and think, well, how can I tell this story of this, this betrayal of this love, and I would work and mind map and think, and these books became this like treasure where I would write everything down. And I showed them once in an exhibition, and nobody looked at the pictures on the wall. They were all furiously looking through, like it was like my underwear drawer or something, like looking through all these books to find out what was really going on behind this work. And I worked in black and white, and I printed all the work in the dark room. And it became this really sort of simple way of living. For 2 years, I really immersed myself and barely saw anyone. And for me, it was this way of really finding my voice. And that's what I love about art. I truly believe that all of us have our voice already inside of us, and we just have to like work hard enough, either through writing or through photography or through painting, the 10,000 hours of just letting it out. And I would search for metaphor. This is how I think about, what I did with his words. That previous photograph, I read this incredible essay in beauty and photography, Robert Adams, and he would talk about the landscape as metaphor. And before that time, I had never thought of that landscape could be about, someone cheating on you. I didn't realize, I didn't think that. I was just looking at it like it's a tree, it's something, it's of something. That a landscape could be about a human emotion. And so that was, 25, 30 years ago now, but that's been my life work of trying to think about the senses and how we can feel more, how we can tell stories. And I think when you put your stories into your work, what happens is people recognize it, Oh, thanks, Anjuli.
These are gorgeous. I mean, the black and white photographs are just so moving and unexpected, because I know your color work so much better.
Yeah, well, these are sort of, no one really ever sees this work, and so I thought it's fun to share something that is less known,
Yeah, and I'm wondering, the split between black and white photography and color, how did you decide to just go so headlong into to leave this behind, to leave this type of beauty behind?
Well, it was a long, dark Maine winter. That's what happened. I was in the darkroom and I was printing this work, and it was like month after month, and it's about, a sad subject matter, and it was really cathartic to make this work. And I was in a darkroom that had no heat, and I used to throw one of those popcorn ceilings, and I threw the hairdryer over the wiry bit, and it was like 10 hair dryers going on. That was the heat right above the sink, super dangerous. And and it came to this point of just like I was just wanted to change, and I had always loved color, and I just burst into color at that point. It was 2003, and I haven't looked back since. So I will shoot in black and white again. I love black and white work, but for me right now, I more so than ever, actually, color has become a really important part of my work.
Yeah, I would almost call it your signature, which is, so many people use color, but it's really something I identify with you and thinking about your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so now your publications, and we talked a little bit about your use of text, but I was so struck by how many you've done, how personal they are, and also not just your use of words, but really your use of time in relationship to writing and pictures and thinking about photographs. Of course, there's the gardening at night, and thinking about what you were able to do when you first moved into your home with your husband and then dog and then child.
Yeah.
And also just the idea, I love the use of language of you an orchestra, you a bomb. And the way that you address your audience, sometimes you're talking to an anonymous reader, and sometimes you're talking to your friends. Sometimes you're talking to someone who's passed away, and sometimes you're talking to your daughter or your husband. Can you talk a little bit more about how you choose that voice, that timeline? I know you have the mind map, but then how do you parse that into something that is legible to someone that doesn't know you?
Well, I mean, that part, I'm not sure I can answer that because it works so intuitively. I do know that I never pick a project and say, okay, I'm going to make work about this now. I just make work, and then I have a date night with my pictures and words and say, what am I noticing? So the writing for me is like, okay, today, driving down with my friend Donna, what did we talk about that struck me? Or what did I see today that struck me? And that's the sort of beginning part of the writing. And the camera is the same way. It's almost this sort of sketchbook. I always carry a camera with me, and I record, what surprised me? What did I gasp at? What shocked me today? Or what did I love? And then I sort of gather that information, almost like ingredients for cooking, and think, well, what's this saying? And it gives me enough of a headlight to, like driving at night, to know, well, that's the next step, and that's the next step. And I trust the, we can move forward. And
okay. I'm going to animate it.
I started animating the photographs. So this is a still photograph, then with a video of the snow or fireflies on top. And it was a way for me of extending time. I mean, photographer's currency is time, right? That's what we have. And there's that wonderful thing, it came from Cartier-Bresson, where he added up, thought about all the 125th of a second, 500th of a second, 1,000th of a second. He added up, and his life work came to like 12.6 seconds. And I love that, to talk about life and living and the joy and pain and love and desire and hate and all of it. narrowing it down to actually like how many seconds that it lasts in terms of pictures. And so for me, that the animations was a way to extend time and to think about time. And I actually would need to, Mark read out the bio, but I actually need to change it because I don't feel like time is passing slowly. I feel like it's voracious. And, you know, I think I'm a photographer. I think I put words down on the page to slow things down, to see what I'm seeing, realize what I'm noticing, try and make sense of the, you know, order out of chaos, beauty out of pain, trying to make something like I was alive, I saw this. And we can move forward through these, Anjuli, but this, you know, this early work from the Red Book, Emergency, this was really where I was sort of looking out on the community, with people that I was surrounded by, friends, neighbors, families, and sort of I just moved to Maine and sort of putting down roots in what I thought was this sort of magical place. Some photographs come very quickly, you know, I see them that day and, you know, it's made, it's like on the fly, out of a window, and other photographs are more constructed, more labored. You know, the fireflies took me a number of years to make in order, because they're fussy, you have to be there exactly the right amount of light for them to show up, otherwise they just become yellow squiggles. So, you know, it's some pictures have taken years to make and others are really just found. And that's the way I work. I say yes to it all, in terms of yes to all the subject matter, yes to all the ways of working, construction, found, and then I look at, well, what have I got? And what is the story here? And letting the work tell me what it's about, rather than me saying, this is a project about, you know, this person or that event.
You know? So interesting. I wonder if you could tell us the story, or one of the stories about this picture, and thinking about time and how it's voracious, and what your daughter said when she saw this.
Oh yeah, so this was a photograph that I had framed. It was at the house, waiting to go somewhere, and Scout was probably, I would say, 4. I mean, it's sort of magical age, and she looked at it and she said, "Is this me when I'm older?" And I mean, it was so magical, the way that thinking of how time is not so linear. You know, and with, you know, Orchestra Bomb, which was my 3rd book, that, you know, at that time period of Scout's life, she really showed up in my pictures around that time. And I think it was because there was so much going on, and I was in a car accident in 2015, coming back from Portland. I'd been to Corianthen, I'd had a great dentist appointment, you know, just the mundane, every day, you know, and then went through a junction and someone T-boned me. And just that things can change that quickly. And then all this stuff was going on politically. And then there was my daughter at home who would say these magical things, who, you know, would jump into the lake. She couldn't swim, but she would jump into the lake because she wanted to see the mermaids, you know. And it was just this way, it was like this 2 opposite worlds of private and public, that I knew that there was this period of time that I wanted to sort of capture these 2 different worlds that were happening simultaneously for me. You know, and she would, she once, I remember, this has got nothing to do with the books, it's just a fun story, that I remember one time when she was about, I don't know, 5, she'd gone for a play date, and the mum called me up during the play date and said, what does Scout normally eat for dinner? And I was about to say, you know, like, whatever it is, you know, healthy stuff. And she said, apparently she only eats chocolate soup. And I was like, yes, you know, and I loved that. It was just this, you know, just this wonder, but meanwhile, you know, what's happening in the world outside the home was really, you know, it's, you know, dark and dangerous. And so that's what I think my world collides with, you know, the work collides with that push-pull of like the awe and the awesome, and then the brutality and the beauty.
Yeah, and you really feel that leap off the page. And one of the reasons I love that anecdote about Scout asking if this, you know, is her in the future, is that sort of intuitive understanding of photographs as time travelers, that you can capture this moment, and it can travel with you in the future, or you can lose it. You know, we collect photographs that are hundreds of years old, and we think about the people that are in them in these really deep ways. And, you know, maybe it's a little bit backwards. We can't photograph the future quite yet, but just that Scout had that moment where she was also projecting into the future through a photograph. It was just, she's definitely your child. You know, it just seems very, very intuitive and feeling through the visual in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, I mean, and I just packed up my mum's house. My mum has recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I packed up her house, and, you know, and the photographs, you know, what are the important things in her life, you know, at one point we had this like folder of, you know, her law degree and her, like, which she hated practicing. She had practiced law for like 1 year. She hated it. She loved learning, but she didn't love it. You know, so, and is that a life that she can type 60 words a minute? And I don't know, so it was really interesting, this idea of the photographs. Like, we didn't even know who the people, but they felt so precious, you know, and had to, you know, I obviously brought them all home with me. And yeah, this sort of forward, past, future of photography, of how it becomes the event itself.
You know, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. There's this beautiful way that you link color to time as well,
Thank you.
especially living in Maine.
Yeah.
You know, what we saw with the picture of Scout in the truck, and then just these gorgeous pictures of the fruit and birds, and when color comes out in such incredible glory in the summer here, which we're luckily experiencing now. Thank you all for being here. And yeah, I wonder, you know, the bleakness of winter, if you could talk a little bit about how that kind of thinking came about. Did it just come with time living here, or was it something you had always experienced?
Do you mean the color or the
sort of
season?
Yeah, the linking color and time and your own feeling, that sort of trifecta of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more with particularly my new book that's coming out in March, I mean, the writing is all about color and my experience with color. In the same way with Blue Violet, I write about, you know, I use flowers as an access point. The work's not about flowers, just as, you know, the cakes aren't about cakes. You know, it's all about, you know, living and what it is to feel and have sensory experience. And so color for me was always this way to access that, to sort of to seduce you or to grab your attention, and to the way it makes you feel. Like, it is a scientific fact that color affects the body, you know, and that's you know, so I've been really digging in. I'm like, okay, well, what happens in the body when we see pink? What happens with the pituitary glands? Like, I love that stuff. I think as an artist, you're sort of required to also be a researcher, to dig deep, and I actually really embrace that part. I love to figure out, like, the facts behind things where science and art collide. And, you know, the seasonality of Maine, we live in a place where, you know, I mean, the weather accosts you here, you know, and just how so much in March and April, you know, we are denied color often in the landscape. It's a monochromatic landscape. And so I find myself banging on, like, Hannaford's door at 7 a.m. trying to make a still life because I need to see some purple, I need red, you know, and it's sort of not having it, you know, not having everything all the time. Like, I'm sure living in California is great, but maybe that, like, not having it makes you want it more, appreciate it more, that the summer is so short here. I mean, I appreciate you all here on this gorgeous day because these you know, it's winter is coming, and my husband loves fall, and I'm like, tell me why again? You know, because I love Christmas. I mean, not Christmas. You know, I love summer so much, and I feel sad at this time of year, you know, that it's over. But then I do love fall, and just it makes you live. You know, when the forsythia comes, it's just this, like, you can't believe it. You know, and it happened again. It's a sort of miracle, and that sort of being aware of nature as a clock, or sort of a time, like, reminder of your own mortality, I think is, you know, beautiful.
And you mentioned red, so I forwarded to this glorious picture of pomegranate seeds on the table, and you actually recommend that in March you should cook with pomegranate seeds.
Yes, I do.
Lots of actually very good advice in the book, so I highly recommend taking a moment. I'm going to look at my notes really quickly, everyone, so thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, this photograph, you know, this is of Scout, and she has always, you know, people say, how long did this take? I'm like, 1 second, because she left. She's always had her own mind of, you know, but I'm very grateful for this, you know, this photograph. And, but again, this idea of, yes, using color as a reminder of, I'm always trying to make work about another sense. How can I make work about taste? How can I make work about what it is to feel or to touch? And that sort of challenge is really something that I sort of wake up excited by each day.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks, Anjuli.
Tell us about this picture. I don't know that I know it.
You know, at the end, this picture actually should have been in the next book. I often find that because I sort of make work in this and then I gather it all together and it sort of seems this arbitrary time, okay, that one's over and the new book will begin. There's sort of some forced deadline, but really it could be just one continuum. I mean, the Red Book, Emergency, was all about sort of finding Maine. Gardening at Night was about, you know, buying a house, you know, our first house together, Doug, Scout, Scarlett, my dog, a home for the first time. I'd been so transient all my life. And then, you know, Orchestra felt like losing it, you know, like there was a moment there. And so this image appeared in Orchestra. I thought it was in Gardening, but it was in Orchestra. And I didn't plan that work, but, you know, around that car accident time, everything happened after that. All the pictures that came out, without me doing the mind maps, planning the pictures, everything that came out was always like some kind of explosion, some kind of awe, or something that reminded you that life felt fleeting. Came from that.
Wow. And who's that standing there?
That's my friend, Nigel. It was a bonfire night in England.
It's gorgeous.
He's looking at I mean, again, one image. Some people think you know, I always work alone, one camera, one lens, nothing fussy. Everything is made in camera, nothing in Photoshop. Or it might be like, you know, like in the darkroom, you could increase the contrast, change the saturation slightly, you know, darker, lighter, burn, dodge. Same with the digital darkroom, but there's not like things added or taken away. I love digital work that's composite, but it's not for me. I want to be out there in the world, boots on the ground, there at dawn getting bitten, but I saw it. It's like that to me is part of living and that's why sometimes the pictures themselves don't matter. It was the act of making them that matters. That I was a witness in the world. It was a stamp. I saw it, and the world's beautiful. It reaffirms. It makes me feel like that humans are worth saving, or the world is worth. You know, it's a reason to to live in many ways.
It's so interesting because you could just as easily hear a documentary photographer say exactly the same things.
Yeah.
But your work is so full of metaphor, like you talked about, a la Robert Adams, and also just the vibrancy of your color. I think, you know, there's such a sort of allergy to that to some documentary photographers for some reason, as though color will distract them, but I think it really gets to the heart of what you do. I don't understand this picture. I need you to tell us more about it.
I'll tell you all. I mean, this is the inside behind. So this is actually, this is not digital composite. It's made in camera. It's an aquarium that had two glass walls on one side and she's the other. So I really do see that as like, you know, I don't think the camera is that complicated to use. I mean, I've been using it for years, right? So it's like, how can I make a picture that sees the way the camera sees different than your eyes? And I really love that. And I think that's why a lot of my recent work is at night in the last few years, because it's, you know, I have recently in the last few years started to need glasses, and I sense a changing, a shifting of vision. And for me, the camera becomes the youthful eye, you know, that it sees better than me now. And I'm like, at every stage of the game, photography keeps giving to me. It keeps showing me, it keeps adding to my life, you know, and it becomes the youthful eye, yeah.
Oh, wow, the giving camera.
I know, right? Yeah. So this is my mum's husband. They came to stay, and I have a complicated relationship with him somewhat, and so I stole his teeth in the morning, and I thought about all the things these teeth have said, and I photographed it against blue, all these different backgrounds, but it was only the baby pink of Scout's room that, I felt like it was that push-pull, right? So you have something that's like, yeah, it's right, but not quite right. There's this and then there's this, So anyway.
Did he wake up before you finished?
Yes. He sleeps late, so he didn't ever know. But there's something so simple about this picture, but I like how it's got a vibrancy, right?
It does. It also has a touch of the abstract, which I don't associate with your work, but there is also, like in the cake pictures, which we'll get to, that element of decay that comes in, right? Those memento mori.
Yes, absolutely. And again, the time element.
Yes. So it's so humorous, and I think the color is so integral to that. The way that it echoes the sort of fake gums of dentures, but also that it's this disembodied lower jaw.
I know. I mean, it's dark and light at the same time, so you're like, oh, should I be laughing? You know, I love that.
I really wanted to know where the owner was, because it did seem like maybe a little cruel.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So Scout is this Scout?
Yeah.
She can be your color in the winter in that bleak landscape.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Is this? No, it's not animated.
Yeah.
Is this through a screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's better.
So this is the book that I saw and was the way that I was first introduced to your work. Do you want to talk a little bit about the impetus for it and where it came from? Yeah,
so I started making this work in 2017. I had started to use flowers as a metaphor and trying to sort of talk. I was looking at the historical use of flowers, of botany, of how medicine, the language of flowers, Victorian language of flowers, anything I could use to sort of talk about the work. And my best friend Mary was diagnosed with a leukemia, and her brother's here tonight. I would send her. She was at Dana-Farber and going through some treatment, and was quite sort of in an isolated unit, obviously to protect against germs, and so every surface had to be Purelled. So at a time when you think you would be eating like delicious fruit and yummy, like healthy things, actually everything was microwaved, just for germs. Everything was very, sort of a sealed unit in that way. So I would send her. She was allowed, obviously, the sense of sound. She would listen to Sia on, and you would send her all this music, on like 10, and then I would send her photographs. And I wasn't going to send her something that felt. I wanted to pick something that just was exuberant, of life, of senses, of things, so she could sort of live in Maine through the photographs, and she would be like, every day, send me more. So it was this sort of wonderful exchange of back and forth. And I also, when I would go to visit, I hung these prisms in the window, and I think you wanted to sort of talk about that bit a little bit.
Oh, well, I was so moved. I visited Cig last summer at a show she had at Dowling Walsh in Rockland, and you had hung up all of these gorgeous vintage prisms, right, that you had found over the years in vintage shops.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just dazzling, and it really reminded me of my grandmother and sort of her spiritualism. And then you told me the story about hanging them in Mary's window while she was dying.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's about the rainbow she would get. There's about 20 minutes, right, between where she would get a room full of rainbows. And I thought that was just the most glorious, beautiful thing that I had heard. And it also relates to a family story that we have about a death, where there was the person passed away, and then everyone went outside, and there was a rainstorm, and then a rainbow came out.
Yeah.
Just not even 20 minutes later. And so just that beauty of color, but also of loss coming together, and that you would do that for her, that you would care for her in that way, and visit her so often, and just be constantly thinking about her and making her circumstances better.
Yeah, and then just the beauty of something so simple as a split, as a prism, and these sort of, or we forget sometimes that, that sort of commercialism has changed the way we feel about maybe a rainbow or about the sunset. And for me, I just feel like those are our everyday things that we can, the awe-inspiring qualities of the natural world.
And just a reminder, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to title this talk, this conversation, "Live in the Light," to live there, right? To look towards the brightness and just the things that make life worth living.
Yeah.
So,
exactly, and to live in a, and to appreciate every day, and we can move through these ones.
I'm going to go back to my.
Oh, sorry. No, is that I think that just this. Do you mind if we turn? Yeah, we're going to turn the lights down for these ones because
fantastic picture.
They work so much better when it's darker. but yeah, this idea of this time on this planet is short, and how can we be kinder, how can we be more generous, how can we love more, how can we give more, how can we share beauty. And that's something, when I was in art school, beauty was a real struggle. It was like, who defines what's beautiful, the sort of sublime and the beautiful, and and what could be valid subject matter. Beauty was sort of a word that we shied away from because it opened up this whole sort of thing in critique. And as I've gotten older, I just know I want more beauty in the world. I want more love. I want more connection. And we can move through these. But, so this was, Blue Violet was, it was my love letter to Mary, but it was my love letter to life itself and to Maine, what it is to be lucky enough to be alive and to have senses and to figure out what's important in life, and how we can live to the fullest. And so often, and that's why none of the flowers are expensive flowers or posh flowers. I'm not into that. It's about sort of the everyday sunset, beauty that is accessible to all of us. It's pansies and, here's a mind map, and the night sky, and, the aurora borealis that we got last month. That was, I've traveled and so many places trying to see it. And then, 2 months ago, what was it? It was happening in Maine. I couldn't even believe my eyes, and this just free and awe-inspiring beauty. And so this is my sort of, or Blue Violet is this sort of, this call to live.
Yeah, and do all the things.
And do all the things, yeah. And so I've worked on neon just as a way to make the words more animated, the words more, to seduce you more, I suppose. I mean, who doesn't love neon? Neon is particularly seductive, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, this is beautiful. I've seen these before. I'm always just so struck by them.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Is this the compost heap?
This is the compost heap. So dahlias, this is at a local place. Everything is typically made in Maine. Very few of my photographs are made outside of Maine, and most of them are made within a 4-mile radius of my house. This is a dahlia farm in Camden, and the dahlia farm itself is very organized, very road, space tagged, but I walked around the corner and it was this sort of day where there was an opening in the woods, and the light was coming down on this compost heap, and I fell down. I couldn't believe it, that I had lived so close to a site of such beauty for almost 20 years and didn't know it. And that's what drives me and gets me up every morning, Anjuli, this idea, or not just that, but this idea that it's happening right now. And so I became obsessed with this compost heap, and I would photograph it in the daytime, at nighttime, in the rain. I did portrait sessions there. I would go at night, I would video it, I would record the sounds of it, anything, because it felt like such a transient before the first snowstorm, and it's all over. And so this sometimes there are sites that become almost their own project in itself, and this compost heap was definitely one.
I love your description, and I forget which book it is, but you had to know what it was doing. You had to know what it was doing in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I love that you related to it as a living, breathing being.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah.
So speaking of living and breathing and finding these moments of beauty so near you, this is forsythia that you forced to bloom.
Yes.
Correct? Is this in a shower? Yes?
Yes, this is my bathroom in Rockport, and I had this wonderful assignment from the Times in 2020, late March, early April 2020. They reached out and contacted 12 different photographers around the country. How are you doing in the pandemic? And we were all like this, what? Because it was that early time where we didn't know. There were no questions answered, right? It was a time we were like, spraying our groceries down, letting them out, sitting outside for a day. And I think we were really lucky living in Maine. Living in New York, I think would be like, my friends who lived there through that time period, I mean, just extraordinarily difficult and terrifying. At least we had sort of nature, but it was moving so slowly, wasn't it? Don't you remember? And every day you're like, has anything grown? And so I decided that I would bring forth spring. So I cut all the forsythia and force them in the bathtub with warm water, and I knew it was going to be a picture. When I opened it the next morning, and I was like blinded by yellow, you know, coming out of the door. It was like a scene from some movie, some sci-fi, and I knew that it would be a picture that I wanted to make. And then I did, you know, we can move through a couple of others. And, you know, this was the first striped squall, and it felt like, you know, to memorialize it, to bring it under the cloche. I painted my Scout with the disco ball. So I was doing whatever I could to, you know, bring joy into my life, bring joy, bring spring, that time, nature would, you know, show me that life would, you know, this virus would pass, that we would, you know, that we would get through this time. And that's what it felt like. I used my work to help me live in a different way, to have an optimism.
Well, so I wanted to ask you, you posted this also to Instagram, and it's a picture of you with your mother, all these beautiful objects and textiles. And so I was knowing your collaboration with Scout, and we'll look at the cakes as well, which Scout makes. I wanted to ask you about your your positionality between your mother and your daughter generationally sort of informs the way that you make photographs, and the way that you think about this need to make photographs about what it is to feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less about, I mean, it does seem, my husband appears in a few photographs, but very few. You know, there's only, and he's amazing. I really deeply am in love with my husband, and we've been married 18 years. But it's something, I do think I am drawn to that, which is feminine, and relationships between mothers and daughters. Scout made these cakes that sort of grew out of COVID and watching the Great British Baking Show. And a friend of mine, Jessie, her mom used to make these wild cakes. And we spent a week on Eagle Island in COVID, which we've done, I just got back on Sunday actually too. And Jessie taught Scout how to make these fantastical cakes. And she said, you know what? You can put shells on them, you can put photographs on them, you can take them in and out of the freezer, don't worry about Ebola and all this stuff. And I was like, what? And she just exploded and started making these crazy cakes. So then I took them and started photographing them. We never ate them because they would always be sort of destroyed at the end. It was such, for Scout, there's like incredible expression, creative expression. It's been a really fantastic collaboration. And apparently there's something that's not common, but it is known at 12-year-old, particularly girls, you know, really drawn to, you know, cake as an expression of creativity. So for me, the cake was just another way of, you know, I'm not a baker. I've never actually made a cake, but people think I have now. They also think my garden's amazing. It's not. It's a disaster. It's really, I'm just cheating. I'm just using whatever I can to make you, you know, like stop and look. My goal is that someone will see my photograph and like it will make them have some like physical like gasp in the body, and that's what I really, you know, that's what I want when I'm out in the field. That's what makes me take the actual picture. So that's the highest goal, the highest sort of achievement, is if someone has that feeling when they look at one of my photographs. So this too is very much about time, isn't it?
It very much is, and we should let's talk about it, and then we're going to open it up to questions because we're getting short on time. Again, this is sort of that, you know, that bit of decay that we were talking about. The cycle of a cake is something that I think we talked about when I visited you last summer. And you also do a lot of play and installation with these works, and I remember there were real cakes and fake cakes, so be careful if you go to a Cig Harvey party.
I mean, it was really fun. So we did this, it was about a 12-foot table, and I filled it with fake cakes and real cakes, and the real cakes lasted the whole entire show, 2 months. Completely, they would look a little disheveled, but the sugar kept them intact. I knew that this would happen because I had photographed them over the course of the 8 months before. I would put them outside every night. No animal touched them. Raccoons, nothing touched them. They, you know, animals are smart. They're not interested in sugar. But it was really, that was interesting. I did not know that.
I didn't know that would happen.
And so the show started like, you know, Jake's dog would like lick the cakes. When people came to the opening, there was one guy ate from the table. I was like, you're a brave man. And other people would touch, the sense of touch, because there was this need to know what was real and what wasn't, and it became about perception then. And, you know, light is a real entity, color is just a perception in the brain. So, it just, everything sort of linked back on itself of what was real. And then this table, I realized it was this clock. It was this time of how the body changes, how these cakes moved and evolved. And at the end of the show, I then took all the cakes and I took them to the Dahlia Farm compost heap and sort of joined them together.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I
wow.
should have put that picture in. But for me, like, so half of these cakes, even in this picture, are real and half are fake.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cig. This
Oh,
has
you're
been
welcome.
absolutely incredible. We want to open it up to questions, or if you have more to say.
Yeah.
But do wait for the mic to come to you if you have a question. So just raise your hand, and Megan, or is it Gabby? Do you have it? Yay! Hi, Gabby. They will bring you the mic, and then Cig will answer your question if she wants to.
I will.
I have a question. Thank you for sharing, first of all.
Thank you.
But you've mentioned the mind map
Yeah.
often, and there was one quick little glimpse, which I think was a mind map. It
Yeah.
was flowers in the center, and
Yeah.
can you talk about
Yes, absolutely.
this mind map?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
So,
might
so once I sort of look at what the work's in front of me, it comes down to typically always like a central word or a central theme. So I'll put that word in the center, and then I'll brainstorm everything off it. I meant to talk about that in the beginning, but I was flustered when the tech thing was happening. So I'll write down every type of light I can think of, every type of, from form and content. So form being the light, what type of camera, what's the color palette, what's the vantage point, what's the distance, what's the focus, is it 2.8, meaning just one thing's in focus, or is f/22, everything's in focus, because that's all a language, right? It's like the same as where you speak. So taking the form of the camera and photography, and then brainstorming, well, what's the right idea around, what's the right language for this idea to be told in? Does it need to be told at noon, or does it need to be told at midnight, this story? And then that helps me sort of plan of when I'm going out with my camera, what type of camera I'm taking, what am I looking for? And then the content is the subject matter. Is it birds? Is it flowers? Is it cakes? Is it a landscape? And so for me then, these mind maps almost become a map of the interior. And it gives me a place to start when I'm ready to, I've got an hour between picking up Scout from school and, dropping off something else. So it sort of takes me back to myself, and it makes visual, it makes the unseen, that which is art, seen. It becomes this bridge. Sometimes I think art is taught in such a complicated way, and it doesn't need to be. I feel like we just need to have a bridge from the outside in, and the mind maps help that.
So if you were going to name 3 emotions that really drove your best work and limit it to those 3, what do you think those 3 would be?
Desire, longing, fear.
Thank you so much. I'm also from the Mid-Coast, and so I recognize so much of my hometown in so much of your work, and it's so nostalgic for me to see. And I first became aware of your work when I was lucky enough to see a series of your photographs projected on the side of the building right next to where the main photographic workshop is.
Yeah.
And it was such a special way to see your work, just the scale of it, but also getting to see your subject matter and the colors as the light changed at night and see the colors pop. And I'm wondering if we could expect another installation like that at some point in the future or maybe here.
Can we do it here, Mark?
I say yes.
Anjuli, can we do it? That for me, like I've had a few, there's every artist I think has a few moments in their career where they're like, and you just take a minute and cry and just, notice what you notice. And for me, that came out of like the darkest time, right? It was November 3rd, the clocks were going back. It was 2020, it was November 2020, COVID was like raging through the community in November 2020, and it was the election. And so it was so divided. And so I projected these hot pink flowers. I went nuts. I found my like brightest photographs, and I projected them 60 foot. The photographs were 60 foot by 35 or foot in Rockport. And I was going to do it for 2 nights, and I did it for, I think it was 2.5 months every night. And it was very lo-fi. I would go down every day at 4 and turn it on, and I would go back 3 or 4 hours later and turn it off. And then, but which is also, I didn't realize you can do that remotely, but it was actually a real blessing. I didn't, John's like, but it was a real blessing because I got to hang out and see who came. And, there was this one woman who worked at Penn Bay Hospital. She was a nurse, and she would come there and sit in her car and just cry. And it was so moving. And I just feel like that for me was the highlight of my career emotionally, that if I could show my photographs that way, I would do that again and again. Unfortunately, and I changed it every night. I mean, it became this, people would drive there then. It became like people were coming from all over to see them. It was really, and I would go up the window, they didn't know it was me, like, oh, do you like it? And it was just really, it was so fun. It was really moving. And I mean, for me to make them, and unfortunately, and very fortunately, they let me do it. The people who built the hotel, it was their property. But it's actually very rare to find a place where you can project, because it needed to be inside, because the projector had to be warm, a completely blank white wall that is so big, around a corner. I mean, it would stop people in its tracks. So it wasn't that people would come like to a museum. Not everyone comes to a museum, It was the best way to show work because it was really democratic. It accosted everyone on their way home. And so and some people, a couple of neighbors complained, but not many. Yeah, it was really moving, and the response was really beautiful. And unfortunately, the hotel now is in that spot. So I'm looking, but it's actually much harder to. It seems so easy that there are blank walls everywhere, but there really aren't. So if anyone knows of any, let me know. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm an educator here in Portland at a local high school, and I helped rebuild a darkroom last year at my school. And just you being a former teacher yourself, I'm just curious what you feel is the value in continuing analog education around photography.
Oh, I mean, I'm so keen to get back into the darkroom. For me, if I didn't have that language to know that a print needs, half a dial of filtration, or that this corner needs a little bit more to hold your eye, just the way that something is exposed, or what this light looks like, how the camera will see that differently, to learn that through film and through analog. I mean, I think it gives you the foundation to able to know your tools. I mean, I really think it's important. Maine Media is also revamping their black and white darkroom, so I'm really grateful that that's happening. I think it's a really important part of, I know you must feel that way, of historical, photographic practices. It's wonderful that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship between serendipity and staging? Because working with you on this recent, soon-to-be released book, seeing the color palettes that you've arranged is so much like a painter organizing shades, and I imagine that the meticulousness of arranging the right color red in the wall with the pomegranate is so astute and thought out, and yet there's a photo like this where clearly you're coming upon these beautiful dusty blooms. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship between finding an image and then seeking and hunting it out, and where do you feel most comfortable, and where do you push yourself in relation to this?
Yeah, thanks, Ocean. I am living. Do you mind if we turn the lights down on this one, because this picture, this is one of my favorites. So I was driving Scout to school, and something happened with the moisture that day. Again, there's no going back, there's no tomorrow, there's no I'll come back later. And thank goodness I stopped. And those are my tire tracks where I reversed. And for some reason, even though I've lived in that area, exact same house for 25 years, or slightly less than the house, but that on that day, all the maples dropped their pollen. and I couldn't believe it. And so I always try and have a camera with me, so when there is that sort of serendipitous moment, that I'm there with a camera that has enough chops to, I'm not there with my iPhone. iPhones are great. People are like, which camera should I use? Well, the one you have with you. They're no use if they're sitting like looking really pretty and perfect in your, at home. But I always try and have a small camera with me so that if this happens, it's much, I think in answer to your question, I think that it's probably easier. I wouldn't say it's a silly word, but I think I make more constructed photographs, like, in a way, but I'm always looking for these, and these are hard come by, but they're really for me like, the world really, I didn't have to do anything to this to make it, to make me realize that the world I was there, I was present, I saw it. And I think we all have that, right? We see things in our daily life. That's why many of us choose to live in Maine, is because we're reminded of the natural world at every turn. And so serendipity, I also think I go out of my way to invite more serendipity into my life. I try and drive a different route home most days. I try and be out in the good light. I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful sentiment to end on too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cig. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Anjuli.